Here we are. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Lovefraud Live. I am so excited. This Thursday, December 16th, 2021, at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, I will be featured in the season finale of a new show on the Investigation Discovery Channel called Love, Honor, Betray. I'm Donna Anderson, author of Lovefraud.com, and tonight I'll give you the inside scoop on the show and how I came to participate in it. I'll also talk a little bit about what isn't in the show. As always, I'll answer your questions at the end of this short presentation. To join the chat or ask a question, please be sure to subscribe. So the show is called Love, Honor, Betray. And as its name implies, it is about people who profoundly betrayed their marriage vows. Many of us know all about that. My show is the season finale. In some of the previous episodes, husbands committed outrageous crimes that their wives knew nothing about. One guy was illegally harvesting tissue from cadavers, and another was robbing banks. The wives had no idea. In another episode, the guy was a classic coercive controller. He and his wife divorced, but he was too angry and too vengeful to let her go, so he killed her. That was awful. My story is a bit different in that my entire marriage was a scam right from the beginning. James Montgomery, my ex-husband, specifically targeted me in order to take my money. And I wasn't the only woman that he did this to. So, how did my story get on TV? Well, quite honestly, because of my online presence with Lovefraud, I frequently hear from TV producers. You may recall that earlier this year, I appeared as an expert in 2 episodes of the show Deadly Women, which was also on Investigation Discovery. Typically, the first inquiry comes from someone whose job it is to scour the internet and find stories. I'll have an initial conversation with them, and if they think the story is good, they'll pass it along to the TV production company. Then another person, perhaps an assistant director, will interview me. If they too think that the story has potential, they'll want to know what kind of materials I have to support the show. For example, I need other people who are willing to be interviewed. For this show, my father, my good friend Cheryl, my divorce attorney, and my new husband Terry all agreed to be in the show. The producers also want to know if I have videos and photos to help illustrate the story. So if the TV production company still likes my story, then they present it to the network. Investigation Discovery has the final say on what shows they will broadcast. For Love, Honor, and Betray, this process started for me last March. That's when the production company first contacted me and did preliminary interviews with me and others in the show. I also sent them lots of videos and photos. We did the actual filming in May. I was interviewed for 8 hours. That was a long day, believe me. My friend Cheryl was interviewed for about 6 hours. My father, my divorce attorney, and Terry were all interviewed for about 2 hours each. Plus, I probably gave them about 40 hours worth of audio and video material. All of this for a 42-minute show. Well, needless to say, most of the material didn't make it into the show. The director had a vision in her mind of the story that she wanted to tell, which was how my husband, James Montgomery, as my husband, betrayed me. But they didn't want to start with the betrayal. They wanted me to tell my story from the beginning, especially about how I felt as events transpired. The idea was to bring you, the viewer, along with me so that you could understand my experience. Then they revealed what my ex-husband was truly all about. He was a con man. If you don't know my story, I don't want to spoil the show for you, so I won't tell you the details right now. James Montgomery's actions, as revealed in the show, were shocking. Still, in my opinion, there was so much more that he did that the show didn't come close to capturing the scale and audacity of James Montgomery's lies and deception. What you'll see in the show is bad, but the reality of his behavior was far worse. The show also doesn't say much about how I held my ex-husband accountable. By creating Lovefraud, I got my real revenge. James Montgomery continued to try to con women after I left him, but I totally blew his cover. At least 7 women that I know of Googled him, found my website, and then dumped him. So if you'd like to know the full and complete story, it's all in my first book, which is called Lovefraud: How Marriage to a Sociopath Fulfilled My Spiritual Plan. The book reads like a cross between a true crime novel and a spiritual journey. Believe me, it is a wild ride. It's available also as audiobook if you prefer to listen to the stories rather than read, or if you want to do it while you're on your bike or taking your walk. Another aspect of my journey that wasn't included in the show was the work that I did to recover emotionally. They do feature my new husband, Terry, whom I describe as my happy ending, and he is. But happy endings don't just happen. Happy endings come when we commit ourselves and work to release the mistaken ideas and hidden wounds that make us vulnerable to the sociopath in the first place. I work very hard to do that, and I encourage you to do it as well. You can see exactly how I did it in my book, and that's how you find your own happy ending. Anyway, I hope that you'll watch the show on Thursday, December 16th, 2021 at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll be hosting a Twitter party during the show, and you're all invited. Just use the Twitter hashtag LovefraudOfficial. Not plain Lovefraud, LovefraudOfficial. I'll be commenting throughout the program, and I welcome your comments as well. If you're watching this video after December 16th, 2021, you can still catch the show on investigationdiscovery.com or on the Discovery Plus streaming service. So that's the presentation for tonight. Next, I'll answer your questions. If you have a question, please be sure to subscribe so that you can ask it and participate in the chat. When you subscribe, you'll automatically be notified about all my new videos. Plus, by subscribing, you boost the distribution of Lovefraud Live, so you'll help to spread the word about sociopaths like my ex, and possibly like your ex as well. So here's a little bit more of my patter, which is how I fill the time for viewers who logged on after the show started so they can catch up. We've also implemented Super Chat on the show, which offers you the opportunity to contribute to Lovefraud's work. I really appreciate the donations we've received so far. So if you'd like to support us, all you have to do is click the $ in the chat window and slide the button to the amount that you'd like to contribute. There's also a link in the description below the video window where you can make a tax-deductible contribution to Lovefraud's education programs if you'd like to do that. So, looks like I have a few comments here. Let's see what we have. Wow, Patricia is contacting me from England, 1 o'clock in the morning. Night owl, I guess, or really dedicated, one or the other. Well, thank you for joining us. I'm so glad to be here. I don't know if you can see the show in the UK. Maybe when it gets online, which they'll put it on the Investigation Discovery channel afterwards. So maybe you can see it. I don't know. Maybe you could check it out and let me know if you're able to see it. Oh, so here's another question. Isa says, I'm in Canada. Where can I watch the show? Again, I know that once the show airs, Investigation Discovery puts it on their channel, on their website. But sometimes you need to be able to have like your cable access. If you have cable TV, you need to be affiliated with that. So I'm not sure. But the other thing that's a possibility is they have the streaming service, which is called Discovery Plus, and that means that you can just get it online. So that might be a possibility. I know that at the moment they're offering it for like 99 cents for 99 cents a month for 3 months as a trial package. So I guess you could spend the 99 cents and get the show. That might work for you. I imagine eventually it will be available in other outlets too, like Amazon Prime or something like that. So actually, I'm not quite sure of the answer to that question, but if you find some information and are able to see the show, perhaps you could let me know, because other people might have the same question. Okay. So Keena says, you saved those women's lives. Yeah, in fact, my Lovefraud book, as I was writing it, I wasn't quite sure how the story was going to end, but I just didn't know. And I was getting towards the end of the book, which took me 4 years to write, by the way. And that's when I found out about one of the women that Montgomery tried to hook up with in Australia, because he is from Australia, and he came here. I met him here. He was living right up the street from me. It wasn't like this was a long distance relationship to Australia, but he eventually went back to Australia and tried to run the con again. So this one woman met him online and flirted with it, and then he eventually went to visit her. She lived an airplane flight away, maybe 2-hour flight or something like that. And after he visited her, her kids Googled his name and found my website. So that's when she really learned what the truth was. And so she contacted me, and the story is just like unbelievable. It's like, oh my God. And so that ended up being the ending of my book, of how this person found out about James Montgomery because of my website, how it prevented her from getting involved. And funny story too. It's another thing that never made it into the show. Okay. All right, so Patricia Lloyd asks, are sociopaths comorbid with histrionics in some cases, like my sister? Okay. Well, first of all, I've explained on this show a few times, but maybe you haven't seen it before, that when I use the term sociopath, I'm using it as an umbrella term for several personality disorders that what they have in common is that the people who have these disorders manipulate and exploit others. So those disorders include antisocial, narcissistic, borderline, histrionic, and psychopathic personality disorder. So the short answer is that yes, there is a lot of overlap among these disorders. People don't fit in little cubes. It's like, there could be some of this and some of that. So it's quite possible that somebody can have, traits of one disorder plus traits of another disorder. It's called comorbidity, which means that you have a couple of different conditions at the same time. And the problem with all of these disorders is that they are both a syndrome and which means that they have multiple signs that tend to hang together, multiple traits, multiple behaviors that tend to clump together, and that's how the disorder is defined. For example, with antisocial personality disorder, you have deception, you have a need for thrills, you have lying, manipulation, those types of behaviors. They all tend to hang together. And then the other part of these disorders is that the traits are on a continuum. So what that means is that any individual can have any of these traits to greater or lesser degrees. So in the end, you have this huge matrix with all these different disorders that can all be had to greater or lesser degrees, and people can be anywhere on the matrix. So that's often what makes it difficult to find or to decide what exactly is wrong with somebody, because it's a little of this, a little of that. So it absolutely is possible for people to have traits from multiple disorders. In fact, there's one disorder that's referred to as a schizopath. And what that is somebody who has schizophrenia, which is, delusions and hearing voices and things like that, combined with psychopathy, which is psychopath. So you've got this, person with no conscience who's hearing voices. And these people are really dangerous. I mean, hopefully there's not that many of them, but, they do exist, and some pretty awful behavior has been attributed to people who have this disorder. Okay, so Kinda asks, how long did you remain single before you felt that you could date again? I actually started dating, I guess it was about 6 months after I left my ex-husband. I mean, for a while, I was just in shock of everything that went on. But I also knew that it would never happen to me again. I mean, I certainly hear from Lovefraud readers who didn't share that experience. They were involved with one sociopath and, got rid of that one, and then another one comes into their lives. I hear that a lot. But for some reason, I knew that I would not have attract another con artist. However, I was still a bit raw. But about 6 months after I left my ex-husband, I met a guy, actually met him online, because again, as I said, I knew it wouldn't happen again. And we communicated for a few months, and then we met in person, and then we started dating. And it was nice. It was a nice involvement. He actually stuck with me throughout my divorce process. And then we dated a few months after my divorce, and then it fell apart. And I was actually more upset by losing that relationship than I was when my marriage ended. And the reason was because I knew it was authentic. I knew that we did truly care about each other. And my heart was broken. But that didn't happen with my ex. When I found out, the truth of what my ex was doing, my first reaction was relief. It was like, ugh, finally, now I can get rid of this guy. But when I broke up with that first boyfriend, that was pretty painful. But it was also part of the journey, because it was helpful in my healing and recovery. Because about, I guess, 6 or 7 months after that, then I met Terry, who turned out to be my husband, and we've been together for almost 17 years. No, we've been together for 20 years. Our next year is our 17th wedding anniversary. So it's important to know that there can be interim steps between leaving or ending a relationship with a sociopath and finding someone who has long-term potential and has the possibility of being a real mate. So, sometimes there are interim steps, and that's okay. Sometimes we just have to date a little while. Sometimes people come into our lives to help us get to the next part, the next step. and that's okay. So that's what happened to me. That's also in my in my book, only in the print edition though. The ebook and the audio book are shorter. I abridged them, but the print edition has everything in it, including this interim relationship, which was very sweet, and it was very helpful. Okay. Oh, so Sammy says, I've got 1 hour left. I'm so excited to finish the book. Sammy is a good friend of Lovefraud, and she's been listening to the audiobook, so I can't wait to hear your reactions when you're finished. And YC wants to know the name of the book. The book, my personal story, is called Lovefraud: How Marriage to a Sociopath Fulfilled My Spiritual Plan. It's available on lovefraud.com and available on Amazon and lots of places that offer ebooks and printed books. So you can get it in lots of places. Okay. So Chanel says, what kind of individual promises to have kids with you in the beginning of marriage but knows that they couldn't? Well, I've definitely heard of that scenario in the context of sociopaths. I mean, I've heard some awful stories about people who promised to have children when they'd already had a vasectomy or were incapable of having children. Yeah, it happens. So essentially, I would say that, I mean, you can't tell by just that one criterion whether or not they're disordered, but that's a pretty big level of deception. If somebody is talking about having kids, knowing that they're incapable of having kids, or they've, gotten themselves fixed or something like that, and they lie to you about that, and your plan or your dream is to have a family, well, that's pretty bad. So I would say if that person also, lies, is charming, is manipulative, can be hostile, any of these other traits that we talk about with a sociopath, if you see those other traits as well, that person may have that disorder. Oh dear. So Tamara says, my friend's sociopath sent me an anonymous package with rope inside to try to scare me away from my friend and her kids. Cops didn't do anything because it wasn't considered a threat. Am I in danger? Well, I'm very sorry that the police didn't take that seriously. I don't know if you're in danger just based on that one incident, but I would say that if this guy has a history of violence, and that means violence not only towards people, but perhaps violence towards animals or violence towards property, that means that the person is capable of violence, and a history of violence is the best predictor of future violence. So that would be a key question. If this person has a history of violence, you might need to take precautions. It also sounds like it's a threat to your friend, because obviously the guy wants to isolate her. He wants to get rid of you. He's probably doing the same thing with other members of her family or friends, her support network. So I would say that your friend may need to document this person's behavior, because although he sent the rope to you, she is the real target. So I hope that she's looking into this, and if there's a pattern there of him engaging in these kind of threats, then perhaps she's the one that needs to go to the police, and I hope that they will take her seriously. Okay, so VDO Vault is giving you some good advice, Tamara. I see that here to document everything. And yes, that's what you want to do, because if you go to the police, they want evidence. Judges want evidence. If you go in there and say, well, he was saying these things, or, he made these threats, words don't necessarily mean a whole lot. But if you've got evidence, that makes a big difference. So definitely, take a look and see if you have anything like that. Okay. Well, it looks like that's the pretty much the end of the questions for tonight. Again, the show is Thursday. I'll be having a Twitter party. So all you have to do is put the little hashtag LovefraudOfficial on your comments, and it'll end up in the stream. So hopefully you'll join us for that. And I want to wish everybody Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. It's almost holiday season. We're taking off for a couple of weeks. My husband and I are taking a little trip over the holidays, and looking forward to that because it's been a very long year. So I wish all of you and all of yours a happy, healthy, and much better new year. Hopefully it'll be better than the past couple years have been. But anyway, take care, and thank you for all your support of lovefraud.com. And I'll see you after the new year. Thanks a lot, everybody.